Hello everyone, welcome to this video. I've had a lot of my clients struggle with hip flexor pain, and often I have to share how to do a psoas release. So your psoas muscle is a muscle that connects along your thoracic spine, the middle of the back, inside. It's a deep muscle. And then it moves through the hip, through the pelvis, into the front of the hip. And it's responsible for swinging the legs. And it's one of the muscles that gets dry very quickly with lack of movement. If you have to be seated for long periods of time, it can get sticky and dry. So of course that's the fascia is not hydrated, and then it can cause a lot of pain. It's also a muscle that is related to stress. So if the body is in stress, the psoas muscle is affected, and it can kind of become sore, or you can manifest sensations in that area. So there's different things that you can do regarding your hip flexors and the psoas muscle. I'm going to share with you some of the physical movements that you can do, but of course, as a yoga therapist, we remember that whatever's happening on the physical layer of our being is really a manifestation of what's going on a deeper level of our being. So if you watch any of my 6 bodies or 5 Koshas videos, it really goes into detail. I go into detail there about what the different layers of our being are, how they permeate into each other, and how they manifest onto our physical layer. So when we have dis-ease or discomfort, lack of ease on the physical layer, that's our first sign that there's something else happening deeper within. So we want to address our mental and emotional state. We want to address our intuition, what it's telling us, our wisdom or intellectual state. We want to address our connection to our soul or spirit. And we want to address our energetic body, so our breath and how the nadis or energy channels in the body are flowing or not flowing. So I won't go into too much detail with that here today. We're going to look more at the physical layer today. But I do want you to consider the other layers within yourself. Now, when it comes to ailments of the hips, ailments of this area of the body, kind of the pelvic area, they're related to an imbalance in the sacral chakra. Okay? Your chakra is located, it's an energetic center in the center of your being, about 2 inches below the belly button, and then 2 inches inside. And when it's balanced, we have free movement here. All the energetic channels move nicely, so we don't manifest sensations of pain or stickiness or discomfort. So one of the ways that you can balance your sacral chakra, I should be wearing an orange shirt today because orange is the color of the sacral chakra. And it's amazing how when we get into this stuff, it's all directly, it's related. So there's essential oils that you can use to support your sacral chakra. Today I have citrus bliss. And so this is a combination of citrus oils. And so you want to think especially of orange. So maybe orange, eating more orange foods, using orange essential oils like wild orange from doTERRA or tangerine, something like that. So I'm going to put this one on. It's one of my favorite ones. It also has a little vanilla in it. So I love the smell of this one. And so these are all little supports that we can use to help balance that area of the body. So you can rub it into the back of the neck, letting it move into the spinal column, the nervous system. And just by smelling it, we're actually affecting our brain, our limbic system, which is responsible for our emotions. So I'm going to share a few things with you before we get into the Psoas release the physical aspect. I want to share with you, this is all about the sacral chakra. I have this kind of handy little booklet that I received regarding the oils and what's happening with your sacral chakra. And you can find these out there if you're interested in something like this to follow. Let me know, and I can support you in how to find something like this. And so the sacral chakra, our first chakra is our root chakra. So that's related to our sense of stability, and the element of the root is earth. The second chakra up from that is our sacral chakra. And now that chakra is responsible for our sense of, in here it says authentic creation, soul fire, and sexuality. And so the element of the sacral chakra is water. So we have our root, our Muladhara, our root chakra, connects us to the earth, gives us that sense of security and stability. And then moving up from there, we have this sense of flow, of water, of movement, of expression as we move up the spine. So it can be blocked very easily. It can be underactive or it can be overactive. And so in here it shares what it would feel like if it was underactive. You could be unemotional, guarded, self-deprivation, sexual repression, poor social skills, denial of pleasure, and lack of desire or passion in life. So it's just a way to reflect. When I'm suggesting these different things, they're ideas that you can reflect on within yourself. If it's overactive, you might have an excessive sex drive, compulsive behaviors, tension, frustration, be overly emotional, hypersensitive, or feel emotionally dependent on others. So you can use oils, or you can even use crystals to help support bringing it back into balance, and then also using the practice. So there's all different tools in yoga therapy that we can use to help balance that area of the body. Once it's balanced, you'd feel healthy creative expression, balanced hormones, an ability to experience pleasure, generous and giving, nurturing to yourself, and you'd feel that you have healthy boundaries. If it stays imbalanced for too long of a period and it's not addressed, we end up with that manifestation on the physical layer, and that can manifest in the way of disorders of the reproductive organs, infertility, urinary system issues, spleen, gallbladder, and kidney issues, menstrual difficulties, and sexual dysfunction, as well as a lack of flexibility. So when my clients come to me and they feel super stiff and like their bodies are not flexible, that gives me a clue that this is one of the chakras that's out of balance. And so I can work with that on the back end of giving them tools to support them in balancing those ailments in their body. So I'm going to start with a few physical activities that we can do for the sacral chakra. Of course, you always want to connect to your breath first. So if you're moving with me today, I'm going to offer a standing version, a seated version, as well as a supine version or laying down version. So first, if we're standing, you want to find your feet about hip-width distance apart. You can see I have my beautiful toe spacers on, allowing my feet to really connect into the earth and root down. I'm using everything I've been given as a sense of support. My toe pads, my toe mounds, my heels. And then I'm letting them kind of drop down or root into the earth. From that place of rooting, there's a rebounding, an equal and opposite energetic lifting from the inner arches of the feet through the danda, so from the pelvic floor, lifting, just imagining there's this energetic tugging, pulling, like a string is connected, and it's tugging all the way up to the sky through the spinal column. So equal and opposite forces are rooting down through the feet, and an equal and opposite lifting up through the danda. And then in between, we have this beautiful buoyant breath right at our center. Between those two energetic forces, we have a breath supporting us. Inhaling to expand three-dimensionally. Exhaling to feel this gathering in at your center. And so yoga begins and ends with the breath. I like this saying, as life begins and ends with the breath. Without the breath, we don't have much of a yoga practice. So it's really important to connect to your breath. If that's all you do in your practice, you're doing the work. You are practicing yoga. So bringing that awareness with you as you move, this kind of energetic rooting down through the feet, and then lifting up through the danda, or the center column of the body. Staying connected to breath. And now the first one we can do for a psoas release, which is the front of the hips. This is usually where it starts to get tight or even cause like shooting pains. But you can also feel quite tight in the middle and low back. So one of the things we can do is get a chair for support, and then taking one side of the body onto the chair. So I suggest to ask your body. So this is your connection to your intuition. Ask which side wants to support you first. So using the stronger side of the body, if it's the left leg feels stronger than the right, then use that first. And then it teaches the other side what to do. So you can see I've got my left foot on the earth. I'm still rooting down through the toe pads, toe mounds, the circle of the heel. And then I still think of that energetic lifting up through the danda. And then connecting to my breath. So feeling a three-dimensional expansion at my center. So side to side, back to front. And then a three-dimensional gathering in at my center with the exhale. Good. So I'm actually going to turn a little bit more sideways this way, so that you can see how if I move my foot forward, I can start to bend into the front foot. So you want to move it, kind of heel toe it forward enough that you're going to get the left knee where it's over the toes, but it doesn't track past the front toes. And then you feel an opening through the front of the right hip. Now I'll turn around and do it the other direction, just so you can see both sides. So this time I'm putting my right foot forward, just so you can see. I'm rooting down. I might heel toe or inch that right foot a little bit farther forward. And then bending through the front knee. My front knee is stacked over my front ankle. At the very most, it might come to a point where it's gliding on top of my front toes, but no farther than that. And then I'm feeling a little bit of a stretch or opening through the front of my hip. So still rooting down through my feet, through the knee on the chair, wherever my body connects to a prop or the earth, I'm rooting down. And then I'm energetically lifting up from the inner arches of my feet, through the inner thigh, through pelvic floor, spinal column, out of the crown of my head. And I want these muscles to work, right? So my hip muscles, my pelvis muscles, my leg muscles, I'm inviting them to turn on and to work and support my pelvis. Working with pain, we work, and especially injury, we only work at a 30% or less effort if there's injury. If there's no injury, you can start to explore 50% or less effort. Working your way up to a maximum of 70% or less effort. So this is the chair version. So that's a supported version of a lunge or a hip flexor psoas release. You can come off nice and slowly with awareness. And I'll show you the standing version. So I'm turning my chair around so that I have the top of the chair to rely on if needed. And so this time I'm going to put my left foot forward close to my chair. So I've got my chair here for support. And you can use a chair on the side, you can use a wall. I've got a bar on my wall, so sometimes that can be supportive for my clients. And then I'm walking my right foot back, my left foot front forward, and my feet are at least hip width distance. You can even go farther apart. So they're on a railroad track, right? We're not on a tightrope where we're trying to balance one foot in front of the other. We're widening our stance so that our left foot is forward, our right foot is back, and then you're going to come up onto the ball of the foot on the back. So you're spiking your heel up towards the sky. From here, you can start to bend into the front knee and bend into the back knee. So you can see I have about a 90-degree or more angle in my back knee. Rooting down, rebounding to lift up through the dunda. So I'm feeling nice and stable here. If you're not feeling stable, use your chair, use a wall. And then you want to make sure you're stacking your head over your heart and your heart over your pelvis. So I can feel a deep opening through the front of my hip flexor, the front of my leg. So that's a standing option. You can repeat it on the other side to bring balance, finding the breath. Bending into the front knee, stacking it over the front heel, front ankle, no farther than the toes. And then through the back toe mounds, I'm pressing the toe mounds into the earth. I'm rooting them down, the toe pads and mounds. And then I'm spiking my heel up towards the sky. And that activates the back of my leg. Then if you want to bend a little deeper to feel a little bit more of a stretch, playing with your perfect edge. So if there's injury, remembering 30% effort. If this is feeling like it's way beyond your 30% effort, then just wait. I'll show you a seated version. I'll show you a version laying down, whether it's on the floor or your bed. And then when you feel ready to come out, use a chair or something for support, bending into the front knee, and then transferring your weight into that front leg, activating those muscles You want them to work for you. I like to take a palm tree for release. Cleansing breath in through the nose, out of your mouth. You can do any release that feels good in your body. So it might be inhaling the arms up towards the sky, exhaling to send it behind you with a cleansing breath. I like to think of releasing anything that no longer serves me. Maybe it's negativity. Maybe it's something somebody else said to you that you're just kind of holding on to and you don't want anymore. Send it behind you. Good, so that is a standing version of the hip release. If it feels too much to be standing, then you can come to a seat instead. So I walk my tail, my sit bones, which I can feel at the root of my spine, the base of my spine, to the edge of the seat. So you can choose if you want to walk your hips back towards the back of the chair. As long as you can plant your feet on the earth. If not, if the chair's too high, bring in a prop. So whether you stack blankets or pillows or blocks or something to make sure that your feet connect to the earth and that your knees are at a nice 90-degree angle. If you're really tall and your chair is too low, then you would have the opposite. The knees would be coming up like this, and that can be hard on the hip flexors. So instead, stack something underneath the bum. We want to get that 90-degree angle in the knees. So I'm walking my hips to the edge of the chair. I prefer this feeling. I can really root my sit bones into the chair. Make sure you have a nice sturdy chair. And then feet are hip-width distance apart. Knees are at a 90-degree angle. Knees stacked over the ankles. Checking with the feet. So even when we're standing, you want to do this as well. Noticing, are your feet turning out? Because when we turn the feet out, we're opening through the front of the body. So we're putting stress and strain through the frontal fascia, the front myofascia of the body. And then the opposite is true. If the toes are turned in, we're opening through the back of the body and putting compression through the front of the body. So see if you can line up the outer edge of your foot with the outer edge of whatever you're working with. So it's parallel. So if your walls are on either side, see if your outer edge of your foot would be parallel to the outer edge of a wall. Finding the breath as you let go and kind of root down into your supports. Taking nice deep breath, maybe through the nose or maybe cleansing breath out of the mouth. If you don't know what cleansing breath is, you can find it in my videos. It's a really nice releasing breath. And then from that place of rooting down, we're getting a lifting up, an equal and opposite lifting up from the pelvic floor. Imagining there's a string connected to the pelvic floor, gently tugging through the spinal column, out of the crown of the head, all the way up to the sky. So you might need to roll the shoulders a few times just to let them relax down away from your ears. Let the shoulder blades draw just very ever so slightly towards each other down the back. So there's just a little bit of an awareness of the shoulder blades on the upper rib cage. And then noticing this three-dimensional breath at your center. And so sometimes when we draw the shoulders back, we tend to pop the rib cage out. So remember to guide it back into the core, hugging the low ribs into the torso. So you might feel a lot right here just from taking a more optimal alignment for your body. And if that's the case, stay here and breathe. By simply bringing your awareness to that three-dimensional inhale and expansion of the center of the core. And then three-dimensional gathering in with the exhale. Just by doing that, you're hydrating your fascia. So less is more. We don't need to push. We don't need to always be really working hard, especially when it comes to pain. Good. So if you're really struggling with a lot of pain through the hip flexors, then I would suggest hugging your knee in towards your chest. So I have my fingers interlaced, wrapped around my knee, and then I'm just hugging them in, but I'm keeping that long spine, so I'm not rounding forward. Shoulder blades are still down my back. Front of my rib cage is still gathering in. And just this right here will put some compression in the hip, which allows the blood flow to expand, or to it's kind of cut off for a minute. Not completely cut off, but we're compressing that area. Using the breath, and then you can release that leg down. Inhale. Exhale to root into the opposite foot, and then draw that opposite knee in towards the chest. So just that alone might cause some cramping or some pain to happen. And if that's the case, just let it go. There's no need to push through pain. So let it go. I was getting a little bit of cramping there, so I'm just letting my leg relax now, and I'm tapping the fascia. So I'm kind of helping hydrate it because it's quite sticky, obviously. That's why it's cramping up. By tapping, so I can use a cupped hand, you can use fingertips, or I'm using a fist, just to tap the flesh of that area. And then I might try again. Inhale. Exhale, gathering in low rib cage, and then hugging that knee in towards the chest. You can see I'm leaning back a little bit. That's okay. Maybe circling through the foot. Just keeping awareness through whole body. So when you're working here, what happened to the opposite foot? A lot of times I'll notice my clients' feet might lose that awareness to their connection or their root. So drawing the toes back down, the entire foot is rooted, and you're kind of leaning into your connection to the earth. Good. So then you can release that, take a few breaths, maybe a cleansing breath in through the nose, out of the mouth. So that's just kind of warming up the hip joint here. So it's compressing it and then allowing the blood flow to come in a little bit more quickly, allowing it to warm up. So you can now play with lifting one foot and then the other. But first I want you to really connect to that gathering in of the low rib cage. We want to use the front of the core to lift, not the hip flexors. And so to do that, you can lean back slightly. And then imagine there's a corset wrapping from the back of your spine, the back of your body, all the way around to the front, and you're kind of tightening it as you lean back. Inhale to lengthen through the spine. Exhale, imagine that corset's wrapping. Inhale, lengthen the spine. Exhale, imagine the corset's wrapping, and then this is only an option. You might add on, as you're wrapping this corset and bringing the awareness to working this core, you can lift a leg. Inhale, lengthen your spine. Exhale, imagine the corset wrapping. So the movement's coming from the core, not from the hip flexor. And if that's feeling like it's going directly to your hip flexors, then let it go. We're not quite ready. You can work a little bit more on some core strength, which I have other videos coming on core strength shortly. So that's an option, just to kind of keep those hip joints lubricated. You can lift the legs, but make sure it's not exacerbating the pain or tension already in the hip flexors. Okay, so that's a seated version of what we can do with our hip flexors. Another standing version that I just want to show you really quickly is to just use a wall. So if you don't have a chair, you don't have a mat set up, and you're just maybe hanging out in your kitchen or something, you can use a wall, you can use the kitchen counter, and you just want to do that same thing that we did standing in the lunge, right? So you can spike the back heel up, and then you're just keeping that front knee tracking over the front ankle, pushing against a wall, a bar, or a kitchen counter. So that just came to me. I thought I'd share that with you. You don't always need all the fancy props to practice most of these yoga therapy techniques and tools. So I'll show you the laying down version now. This is a version you can use if you're able to come down onto the floor. And I love this one. This is one of my favorite releases, but you have to be at that state in your body that it feels good to lay down. And if it doesn't feel good to get onto the floor, another option is to try this on a bed where it's a little bit higher. So laying down on your chosen support. I'll just move my clip so my head can come to the earth. So you want to make sure you have spinal alignment. So if it means that if the head is laying down and the chin is way up, that means that you don't have spinal alignment and you're opening the front of the throat, which can cause the body to go into stress. So if that's the case, you want to get a head and neck support. So maybe a block, a pillow, something to go underneath the head to make sure that the chin is in line with the heart, right? So you can imagine there's a elastic band or something connecting the chin with the heart. So if it's too far up, find a prop to put beneath the head. And if it feels okay, that you can still feel that kind of connection chin to chest, back of the head's on the earth, then you'll be okay with your spinal alignment. You can snuggle your shoulder blades underneath your heart space, letting the body kind of settle in. And then again, noticing the feet. So you might even take a look at your feet and see, okay, is the outer edge of my foot aligned with the outer edge of my mat or parallel with the outer edge of a wall or whatever you're using as a reference. Play with where it feels best to have your feet, whether it's hip width distance apart, maybe closer to the pelvis, maybe farther away, maybe wider. And if they go wider, usually the knees want to fall in for some bodies, not for everybody. And if so, you can put a prop between the thighs. You can put a pillow or a ball or a block between the thighs so that there's something there to support the legs from falling all the way together. So mine feel best right about here. Good, and then I'm going to root into my foot. So my toe pads, toe mounds, heel. I'm putting a little bit of effort in, not so much that I'm really activating the muscles of my legs and my pelvis, but just a little awareness of letting that foot fully connect and kind of drop down into the earth. Then I'm going to slide my left heel out so that my left leg is long. And then I'm just going to rock my leg back and forth. So you can have your hands on the earth, you can have them on your body, wherever it feels best to you. So this is a nice release for the fascia of the hip. So just rocking back and forth, letting the breath support you. So you're hydrating the fascia here. So I like to play with this and think of my foot guiding the movement. So my ankle and lower foot's guiding the movement. And then I like to play with the idea of the upper leg bone is what's guiding the movement. So my foot is just passively moving. My upper leg bone or femur is what is guiding the movement. And see if something feels better or more supportive to you. Good. Once you feel that that is complete in your body will tell you when it's had enough or when it feels so good it wants more. Listen to that. Listen to your intuition. Then we're going to point our toes towards the opposite side of the body. So I'm pointing my toes now towards the right side of my body. And just breathing here, I can feel some release through the fascia of my body. So you might feel something, you might not, and that's okay too. Keeping the pelvis nice and stable and heavy. So wherever you're connected to the earth, it's not moving other than just the foot. Good. So then as you're pointing and sending the energy out of the tips of your toes, we're breathing, feeling this expansion three-dimensionally at your center. And then gathering in three-dimensionally at your center. And you're kind of pulling the belly button in and up or leaning into the back of the rib cage to connect to the core on the exhale. And now send the energy out of the heel, keeping the foot pointed towards the right side of the body. And if it doesn't point there, that's okay. Just imagine you're doing it. Go as far as your body wants you to go, staying in your perfect edge. So 30% effort if there's injury, 50% if not, 70 if you're really getting more deep into your practice, but never over 70% effort. Now I'm sending energy out of my heel. So I've got my foot is more flexed now, the dorsiflexion. So my toes are still, energy is going out of the tips of my toes. But I'm also sending the energy out of my heel. Connecting to my breath. I might even walk my left foot over to the right slightly. So again, playing with your perfect edge, finding a kind challenge, working within your perfect percentage. So just breathing here, playing with sending the energy out of the heel and then sending it out of the tips of the toes. We're really tugging at the fascia of the pelvis. And that's good. We want to hydrate that fascia. It gets really dry and sticky. And then the final option here is to extend the left arm up over your head as well. So then you're getting a little bit more of a fascial tug through the entire left side of the body. Staying connected to your breath and your center. And I love when I'm laying on the floor, I have more reference. On my exhale, I can really lean into the back of my rib cage to feel the front of my core turn on or activate. So letting the back of the rib cage be heavy. Noticing what's happening with the upper arm bones. So you don't want to take the bones way away from the socket. You want to keep that upper arm bone plugged into your shoulder socket. So there's lots of integrity of that joint. And then moving from there. So there's no need to reach beyond that. We're just reaching from this place of integrity out of your fingertips. Good. So that might be a lot. You can let it go, and remembering this is your practice. So if at any time it feels like, oh, that's too much for me, let it go. Bring in a little more kind of shaking or tapping. Tapping with cupped hands or fingertips. Sometimes it just feels better to be still. So if that's the case, just let your body rest in what we call constructive rest. So knees bent, feet are on the earth, or the prop beneath you if you're on a bed. Good, and then we're going to move to the other side. So you might want to take a little bit of movement through the knees, letting them windshield washer back and forth. But see how my upper torso is staying quite still. So I'm not overextending my body. I'm not turning my knees all the way to the right and then having my left shoulder come off the earth. That's losing the integrity. So we want to keep the shoulder blades rooted. I like to keep the back of my rib cage rooted because that gives me a sense of being really connected to my core. I spent many years in yoga just kind of flailing about. My body would go into all sorts of positions, but it didn't mean it was what my body needed. And so especially if you're hypermobile, where you have a lot of mobility in the joints, then you need to really be aware of staying connected, rooted in integrity. Good, so now we're moving into the other side. So I'm planting my left foot, finding my toe pads, my toe mounds on the earth, my heel, it's rooted down. But again, I'm not really pressing in to activate my muscles. I'm just sensing this awareness of dropping energy into my foot, into the earth. So it's connected. Finding the breath and then sliding my right foot out long, rooting through the back of my rib cage, my shoulder blades, heavy through my pelvis. And then letting this leg rock back and forth, but I'm staying quite still through the torso. Again, playing with whether the movement comes from the foot or the upper femur bone, the upper thigh bone. What feels the best to you? You can slow it down. Slowing down is often where I find the magic starts to happen, rather than rushing through or speeding through activity, my day, my practice, whatever it might be. Still breathing. So if you stop breathing, the body goes into stress. And then we know as soon as we go into stress, we exacerbate pain. So we want to stay connected to that breath. That feels like enough in my body. Now I'm going to turn my toes towards the left side of my body, sending energy out of the tips of my toes, still rooted through back of rib cage. Breathing. Finding your perfect edge. So that might be only working at 5% today, and that's okay. You're showing up and you're doing the work. Doesn't matter what percentage you're putting in. You're doing the best for you, and that's what's important. And then sending energy out of the heel instead. Also out of the tips of the toes. So trying to keep that same shape that we have in the foot when we're standing. So a lot of yoga that I've practiced, the cue is to pull the toes up towards the face. And that can kind of cut off the energetic flow. So instead, playing with this idea of sending energy out of the tips of the toes from the leg, from the foot, keeping what we call a dowel foot. So it's a foot that looks like it's standing on the earth. Good, and then you might let this go. You might have had enough. You might come back to just a little bit of rocking to release. Or you might add the arm on. So reaching the arm up overhead. Now if the arm is reaching up and it's not coming to the floor, there's no point in leaving it hanging here in space because it's not supported. So if you want to play with the arm, then you need to stack up pillows or blocks or props to support the arm, and so you can allow it to feel supported and rooted into whatever you've got to prop up. I've been doing yoga for quite some time. As I said, I'm hypermobile as well, so my arm will go all the way to the earth, but most people's, especially in bodies that are not flexible, they don't. So don't feel like you're different or, there's anything wrong. It's just meeting your body where it's at and then offering it support with compassion, with love, with acceptance. And then when you come out, if you have any shoulder issues like myself, I like to take my other hand and help my arm to come back down just to take less strain off the shoulder socket. So really this practice, and as I talk about in my online program, we spend a whole module on self-care and self-compassion and the importance of that during times of chronic conditions and pain. So I'm slowly coming out. There's no rush. I can take my time, reveling in the space between movement. Letting the body adjust. That's really the truest form of love that we can give ourselves, is this sense of compassion. There's no rush. We don't need to flail our bodies through life. We can give ourselves permission to go slow and to take time to just be. When you feel ready, you can turn to one side. You might find a support for underneath the head in fetal position, just using my arm. Again, taking a little time here and space between just to connect to the sense of grounding, the sense of feeling supported by the earth or by your props, by your bed, your couch, whatever it is. Then pressing into the top arm, the arm that's on top, connecting to your breath to really press the earth away from you as you come up to a comfortable seat. So you might not feel comfortable on the floor. You can prop the hips up with a prop. So you can sit on a block or you can sit on a bolster, some folded blankets. And so what that does is it also allows the hips to release. So these hip flexors can be quite tight. And when we try to sit on something flat, the body stays in this tight, rounded shape. So by propping the hips up, I'm just going to grab a prop so you can see the difference. I'm just using, this is a 2-inch block, but you can use a 4-inch block. You can use a 5 or 6-inch bolster. Meeting the body where it's at. So I'm sitting on the prop, and now you can see how much more my pelvis is allowed to kind of tilt forward. It's not just stuck in this posterior tilt. It can roll into an anterior tilt. So it's allowing my hips to also open up. And so of course, if your knees and everything's feeling tight, that's okay. You can also put props underneath the knees here. So we don't want things hanging out in space when you're practicing. And then you can take whatever clothes that you'd like for your practice. I love to bring my hands together at heart center, bow my head towards my hands, I imagine I'm emptying all of my thoughts into the space of my heart, infusing my thoughts with kindness, compassion, forgiveness, empathy, and love. Raising the head up, you might close with me. I bring my thumbs to the third eye, and you can repeat after me out loud or in your head if you choose. Think kind thoughts. Thumbs to the lips. Speak kind words. Thumbs to your heart. Do kind things. Thank you for joining me in this Psoas release and awareness practice. I hope you have a wonderful day. If you would like any more support around the sacral chakra or resources, please comment below and I will send whatever free resources I have to you to continue to support yourself with a sacral chakra balancing and nourishment. Once again, thank you so much.